I learned the hard way that saving a company money doesn't automatically save your place in it. It happened on a Tuesday that started like any other. Coffee gone cold, inbox already angry. The kind of morning where you're solving problems before you've even said good morning to anyone. For 3 months, I'd been living inside one ugly project, a vendor mess that was bleeding the company dry. Hidden fees, missed service levels, penalties buried in fine print, the kind of contract nobody reads until it's too late. I read it, every page. I built a case. I pulled invoices, mapped outages, matched them to the clauses the vendors swore didn't exist. I looped in legal, procurement, finance, carefully, quietly, because in corporate life, the truth only matters if you can prove it 10 different ways. And it worked. We renegotiated. We clawed back credits. We killed the penalties. We rebuilt the pricing model. When the dust settled, the savings came out to $8.6 million. Not projected. Not over time. Real. My director shook my hand. My boss called it hero work. The CFO mentioned my name in a leadership update. For one full day, I thought, maybe this is what it looks like when the right people finally notice. Then the following week, an all-hands invite hit my calendar. Org update. I didn't think much of it. They do these every quarter. Titles change. People smile. Everyone pretends it's about alignment. I sat in the back of the conference room with my notebook, still in work mode, already planning the next phase of cleanup. My boss walked in late, confident, relaxed, like the decision had been made weeks ago. He clicked the first slide, and there it was, a new role, a bigger title, a promotion tied directly to the project I'd just saved. And beneath it, not my name, his golden employee's name, the guy who had barely touched the work, but somehow always managed to be present when the credit was handed out. The one my boss called a culture fit, the one who never challenged him, never pushed back, never made him uncomfortable. People started clapping. I didn't. My hands were on my knees still because my brain was busy doing something calm and terrifying, connecting every moment I'd ignored for the last year. The little edits to emails, the meetings I was removed from because it's already handled. The way my boss always spoke about my work like it belonged to the team, until it was time to reward someone, and suddenly it belonged to one person. I felt my face stay neutral, but something behind my ribs dropped. My boss looked toward me for a second, just a second, like he wanted to make sure I'd play along. I forced a small smile, and that's when I realized something. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the system working exactly as designed. The meeting ended. People swarmed around the promoted guy, handshakes, jokes, well-deserved, the usual performance. I stayed seated until the room thinned out. Then I walked straight to my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up the folder I'd kept out of habit. Contracts, email threads, audit notes, approvals, the internal ticket trail, everything with timestamps, everything with names. Because I didn't know what I was going to do yet. But that was the moment I stopped being naive about what I was dealing with. And I promised myself one thing. If they wanted to rewrite history, I would make sure the real version was impossible to erase. They didn't even try to hide it. The same afternoon as the all-hands, my boss posted a congratulatory message in the company channel. 2 paragraphs of corporate confetti about leadership, impact, and recognizing excellence. Then he tagged the golden employee. Not me, not my team, not even the project name. Just a vague, sanitized summary so nobody could ask inconvenient follow-up questions. I stared at the post for a full minute, feeling something I didn't like admitting. Embarrassment. Because it wasn't just that I didn't get the promotion. It was that they were turning my work into someone else's story, in real time, in front of everyone. I kept my face neutral. I answered a couple of Slack messages. I closed my laptop like I was done for the day. And then I did the one thing I'd never done before. I stopped by my boss's office. He wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. So I waited. Not dramatically, not pacing, just standing by the glass wall. watching people walk by with that busy but not urgent corporate expression. When he finally came back, he looked almost pleased with himself, like he'd just made a hard leadership call. "Hey," he said, casual. "What's up?" I kept my voice calm. "I saw the org update." He nodded like he expected me to congratulate him. "Yeah, big step for the team." "For him?" I corrected. His smile tightened for half a second, then returned. "Look, I know this is not what you wanted, but you have to understand how these decisions are made." That sentence, "how these decisions are made," was his favorite shield. It made everything sound inevitable, like gravity. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked one question. "Can you explain why he got promoted off the back of a project I led?" My boss leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, performing empathy. "He's visible," he said. "He's consistent. He's got leadership presence." "Leadership presence," I repeated, because I wanted to hear how ridiculous it sounded out loud. My boss exhaled like I was making it complicated. "You're incredible at the work," he said, softening his tone. "But you can be intense. You push. You challenge. You make people uncomfortable." There it was. Not performance, not results. Personality. And I knew, right then, this wasn't about one promotion. This was a warning. Stay in your lane. Keep fixing problems. Stop asking who gets credit. I nodded like I accepted it. "I hear you," I said. His shoulders relaxed, like the conversation was over. Then I added, still calm. "I want it documented. The criteria, the decision process, and a formal summary of why I wasn't considered." His eyes sharpened. "That's not really necessary," he said quickly. "Let's not make it weird." "I'm not making it weird," I replied. "I'm making it clear." He gave a small laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Come on. We're adults. We don't need paperwork for everything." In that moment, something inside me settled. Adults don't need paperwork when everyone's acting in good faith. Paperwork is what you ask for when you realize you're the only one playing fair. I left his office and went back to my desk. I didn't send an angry email. I didn't vent to coworkers. I opened my private folder and started building a timeline. Every major decision, every approval, every email where I was the one giving direction, every meeting invite I'd been removed from, every document that proved I wasn't just helping, I was leading. Then I did something else, quietly. I requested a copy of my last performance review, notes from HR, standard policy, nothing illegal, nothing dramatic. And while I waited, I looked at the one detail nobody else seemed to care about. The vendor contract savings had to be audited and signed off quarterly, which meant the CFO's office would be revisiting the entire project. Numbers, ownership, accountability, in about 4 weeks. And my boss had just handed the public credit to someone who couldn't answer the hard questions. That night, I went home and sat in my car in the driveway for a long time, engine off, hands still on the wheel, because a part of me wanted to quit. But another part, calmer, colder, realized quitting would let them keep the story. So I made a different decision. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to let the company's own process expose the lie. And then when the timing was right, they were going to learn what $8.6 million of savings really meant. The next morning, the golden employee stopped by my desk like we were friends. He had that polished, careful smile, the one people practice in mirrors. "Hey," he said, "just wanted to say, I really appreciate everything you did on that vendor situation. Couldn't have happened without the team." The team. That word again. Soft, blurry, convenient. I looked up from my monitor and met his eyes. "You're welcome," I said, because anything else would have sounded like desperation. He lingered a second too long, like he was waiting for me to congratulate him properly. When I didn't, he gave a small shrug and walked away. And I noticed something as he left. He wasn't excited. He was nervous. Because deep down, he knew what he'd been handed wasn't his. It was a title stapled to someone else's work. and now he had to stand on it. For the first time since the all hands, I felt something close to control. Not because I had power, because I had proof. Over the next 2 weeks, my boss started doing something subtle, something only people who've lived through corporate politics recognize. He started rewriting the past. It began with meeting invites. A recurring finance sync popped up on the golden employee's calendar instead of mine, one I'd led for months. Then a vendor steering committee invite came through and I was listed as optional, like I was a guest in my own project. Then the emails started. My boss stopped, including me on threads where decisions were made, but he'd forward me the final message afterward with a short note. FYI. That word was like a slap. It wasn't an update. It was a demotion in a single syllable. At first, I tested it. I'd reply with facts, corrections, questions, professional, tight, no emotion. And every time, my boss would respond the same way. Let's align offline. Offline, unrecorded, no trail. So I stopped responding the way he wanted. I did something smarter. I documented everything. Every FYI. Every invite I was removed from. Every decision made without me that depended on work I'd built. And I used the company's own systems to do it. Tickets, approvals, audit logs, stuff that doesn't care about narratives. Then HR responded to my request for my performance notes. It was an automated email, polite and empty, with an attachment and the usual warning about confidentiality. I opened the document and scrolled. My last review was strong. Numbers, outcomes, exceeds expectations. But buried in the middle was a paragraph I'd never seen before. It wasn't written like feedback, it was written like a case file. Can be difficult to collaborate with, challenges leadership decisions, needs to improve executive presence. No examples, no dates, no context, just labels. And that's when the anger finally hit. Not explosive, not loud, a cold kind of anger. Because I realized what my boss had done. He wasn't just blocking my promotion, he was building justification. If I pushed back, I'd be difficult. If I escalated, I'd be not a culture fit. If I asked for fairness, I'd be intense. It was a trap designed to make me either accept it quietly or react badly and prove him right. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept replaying every meeting from the past year. Every time I'd corrected a number, every time I'd pointed out a risk, every time I'd done the thing the company paid me to do. And I saw it clearly. My boss didn't hate me. He feared me. Because I was the kind of employee you can't control with charisma. You can only control me with narrative. So I changed the game. The next day, I scheduled a short meeting with finance. Not a dramatic escalation, not urgent, a normal 15-minute check-in framed as process. I invited 2 people, the finance manager who tracked the savings, and someone from procurement who'd been on the renegotiation calls. I titled it something harmless. Quarterly Savings Validation. No accusations, no politics, just numbers. When the meeting started, I kept my voice steady. I'm updating our audit folder ahead of the quarterly review, I said. I want to confirm ownership mapping and supporting documentation so there are no surprises. The finance manager nodded, already relieved someone was taking it seriously. Perfect, she said. We need clean backup for the CFO. I shared my screen. A simple folder structure. Contracts, invoices, credits, email approvals. And then I said the line that changed everything. I noticed the org update listed a new owner for this initiative. Before finance locks the review packet, I want to make sure the person listed can speak to the details. Because most of the supporting proof lives in my correspondence and my approvals. Silence. Not awkward silence. The kind that happens when professionals realize they're standing on a fault line. Procurement leaned forward. Wait, she said slowly. Who's listed as the owner now? I didn't answer emotionally. I just pulled up the org chart and pointed. The golden employee. The finance manager blinked. But he wasn't on the renegotiation calls, she said, confused. He didn't sign off on the credits. I kept my tone neutral. That's why I'm asking, I replied. If ownership shifted, we should update the audit binder and reassign the sign-offs. Otherwise, the quarterly validation will be messy. Messy. That was a polite word for what it would actually be. A public problem? The finance manager closed her laptop halfway, like she needed to think. I'm going to loop in my director, she said carefully. We can't submit a savings packet without the right owner. Procurement nodded. And we can't redo the vendor paperwork, she added. Legal already signed off. I didn't smile, but inside, something clicked. Because for the first time since the promotion, it wasn't just my word against my boss's narrative. It was finance's compliance against my boss's politics, and compliance always wins. After the meeting, I returned to my desk and saw a calendar invite pop up from my boss. Quick chat, no agenda, just 15 minutes. And I knew, before I even accepted it, someone had already asked him a question he couldn't answer. My boss didn't wait for the scheduled quick chat. He called me 10 minutes later. I watched my phone buzz on my desk while my inbox refreshed in the background. Like the office itself was holding its breath, I let it ring twice before I picked up. Hey, I said, calm. His voice was too friendly, too fast, like he was trying to outrun something. Just wanted to sync, he said. Heard you've been asking finance about the savings packet. I scheduled a validation meeting, I replied. Quarterly audit prep. A beat of silence. Then he tried again, softer. You know how this stuff works. Finance doesn't need to get pulled into internal org decisions. Finance gets pulled in when finance signs off, I said. That's their job. His tone tightened. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. I leaned back in my chair, eyes on the glass wall of our open office, watching people move around like nothing was happening. I didn't make it bigger, I said. You did when you tied a promotion to a compliance-reported savings initiative. Another pause, then the shift came, the part where he stopped pretending. Listen, he said, you're very good at execution, but this isn't just about execution. This is about trust. Trust. That word is what managers use when they can't say the real reason out loud. Okay, I said, then put it in writing. He exhaled sharply. I'm not doing this game, he snapped. I'm trying to protect you. Protect me? From what? The truth? I'm protecting the company, I replied, from an audit packet that doesn't match reality. He hung up without saying goodbye, and within an hour, the next move landed. An email from HR. Subject line, role alignment. I opened it and felt my stomach tighten, not because of fear, but because of how predictable it was. It was written in that polished corporate language that sounds neutral, while it corners you. They were realigning responsibilities. They were streamlining the vendor program. They were moving me to a support capacity. Support, not lead. The golden employee, of course, would be the program owner. They didn't call it a demotion. They didn't mention the promotion. They just quietly removed my authority and packaged it as efficiency. And then came the line that confirmed everything. Going forward, please route all communications regarding the vendor contract to the program owner. They were trying to cut the paper trail at the source. They wanted the story to become true by force, not by fact. My hands stayed steady as I replied, short, professional, no emotion. I understand the request. Before I transition communications, please confirm the process for transferring the supporting documentation and approval trail required for the quarterly savings validation, including access to the audit folder and the email chain with legal and procurement. I copied finance and procurement because I had a legitimate reason. Compliance, I pressed send. And that's when the office turned into a quiet storm. Within 15 minutes, the finance manager replied, not to me, but to HR and my boss. She asked for a meeting, not later in the week, today, because once finance is copied on something that touches audit, it stops being internal politics and becomes risk. The meeting invite hit calendars like a warning flare. HR, my boss, finance director, procurement lead, legal counsel, and then, almost as an afterthought, the golden employee. When we walked into the conference room, he looked different than he did during the all hands. Less confident, more careful. My boss sat near HR like he wanted backup. Finance sat across from them with laptops open, already in "we're not here for feelings" mode. Legal didn't smile. The finance director started. "We're preparing the quarterly review packet for the vendor savings initiative," she said. "We need clarity on ownership, documentation, and attestation." My boss tried to keep it simple. "Ownership has transitioned," he said. "We're aligning the program under—" The finance director held up a hand. "That's fine," she said. "But ownership in the org chart is not the same as ownership in the audit trail." She looked at me. "Can you confirm who negotiated the credits, signed the approvals, and maintained the evidence file?" I didn't gloat. I didn't lecture. I just answered, clean and factual. "I led the renegotiation workstream," I said. "I coordinated with procurement and legal. The evidence file is built from my correspondence, my ticket approvals, and the contract addendum signatures." Legal nodded once, small but decisive. Procurement followed immediately. "That's accurate," she said. "He ran the calls. He drove the terms." The golden employee shifted in his seat, like the chair was suddenly too small. HR glanced at my boss. My boss tried to pivot. "We're not disputing his contributions," he said. "We're just recognizing leadership in a broader sense." Finance didn't care. The finance director looked directly at my boss. "Then the person you promoted needs to be able to answer audit questions," she said. "Can he explain why the penalties were waived? Which clauses were invoked? Which invoices were credited? What the contingency language was if the vendor disputed the outage data?" Everyone turned to the golden employee. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out at first. Then he said carefully, I was involved at a high level." Procurement's expression changed, tight and impatient. "That's not an answer," she said. The finance director didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "High level doesn't pass audit," she replied. My boss's jaw clenched. Then legal spoke for the first time. And when legal speaks, meetings end. "If the attestation is signed by someone who lacks first-hand knowledge," counsel said, "and the documentation chain is misrepresented, that creates exposure." Exposure. That one word cut through the room like a blade. HR's posture stiffened. Because now it wasn't about a promotion. It was about whether my boss had just created a compliance issue to reward a favored employee. The finance director closed her laptop halfway. "So," she said, "either the documented owner remains the owner for audit purposes, or we rewrite the entire packet, reassign sign-offs, and revalidate the savings." Nobody wanted that. It would burn time. It would trigger questions. It would invite scrutiny. And scrutiny is the one thing favoritism can't survive. My boss looked at me, eyes sharp. I stayed calm. I wasn't fighting him. I was letting the system do what it always does when someone lies on paper. Then HR asked the question that made my boss visibly tense. Why was he moved to a support capacity if he's the documented owner of the initiative? My boss didn't have a clean answer, so he did what people do when they're cornered. He tried to make it about me. "We've had concerns about his communication style," he said. "He escalates. He's challenging." I didn't flinch, because I'd prepared for that too. I slid a printed sheet across the table, not dramatically, just like it was another document. It was my last performance summary. Exceeds expectations. Strong collaboration feedback from cross-functional partners. Specific praise from finance and procurement. Written before the promotion drama. HR scanned it. Then finance added flatly, "He's been professional with us." Procurement nodded. Same. Legal didn't even look up, just said, "Documented facts matter more than impressions." My boss's face went pale. Not movie pale, but the kind of pale you get when you realize the room no longer belongs to you. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. He wasn't angry. He was scared, because he understood what was coming next. Not my revenge. Consequences. After that meeting, the office felt different. Not louder, not dramatic, quieter. The kind of quiet that happens after people realize a story they've been repeating out loud doesn't match the records. My boss didn't speak to me for 2 days. No quick sync, no hallway chats, no forced smiles, just calendar declines and silence. Then on the third morning, HR emailed again. Subject line: follow-up. A meeting invite for that afternoon. Same room. Same attendees, plus one new name. Internal audit. That addition told me everything. This wasn't about my promotion anymore. It was about what my boss had tried to do with the paper trail. When I walked into the conference room, the golden employee was already there, sitting with his hands folded like a kid called into the principal's office. My boss was staring at his laptop, not typing, just staring. HR had that careful expression they wear when they're trying to look neutral while preparing to cut a thread. Internal audit didn't waste time. "We're doing a limited review," the auditor said, calm and direct, "focused on ownership misalignment of a material savings initiative and any downstream reporting risk." Material savings initiative, $8.6 million. You could almost hear my boss swallow. The auditor continued. "We have 2 questions. 1. Who performed the work and holds first-hand knowledge necessary to attest? 2. Why was ownership represented differently in internal communications and the org chart?" HR glanced at my boss. He tried to speak, but his voice didn't have the same confidence anymore. "We reorganized," he said. "It was a leadership decision." Audit nodded once, like they'd heard that line 100 times. "And the basis for the leadership decision?" the auditor asked. My boss shifted. "We needed someone with stronger executive presence." Audit looked down at their notes, and then up again. "And how does that align with the documented approval trail, showing the other employee as the primary owner and decision maker?" My boss didn't answer right away. He couldn't, because there wasn't a legitimate answer that didn't sound like what it was. Favoritism dressed as culture. Then the auditor turned to the golden employee. "Can you walk me through the renegotiation timeline?" The golden employee blinked. "I wasn't on those calls," he admitted quietly. "I was updated afterward." The words hit the room like a dropped glass, not because anyone was shocked, because he said it out loud. Audit didn't react emotionally, they just wrote it down. Then they turned to me. "Can you confirm you have access to the evidence file and can provide it to audit?" "Yes," I said. "It's organized by month with approvals and invoices attached." The auditor nodded, satisfied. And then HR did something I didn't expect. They asked me to step out for a moment, so I did. I stood in the hallway, staring at a framed poster about integrity and speak-up culture, thinking about how those posters always look cleaner than the reality behind the glass doors. 10 minutes passed, then 15, and I realized something. If they were talking this long, it meant decisions were being made without me, which was fine. Because for once, the decision wasn't about whether I deserved something, it was about what they couldn't ignore anymore. The door opened. HR asked me to come back in. When I walked in, my boss wouldn't look at me. Audit spoke first. "We're issuing recommendations," the auditor said. "Ownership will be corrected to match the documented trail. Any reporting related to this initiative will be updated to reflect the true workstream lead." HR followed immediately, voice careful. "We're also reversing the support capacity alignment," she said. "Effective immediately, you'll resume program ownership for audit continuity." My boss's fingers tightened on the edge of his laptop. Then HR said the sentence that made the room go still. "And we'll be conducting a management review regarding the decision-making process that led to the mismatch." Management review. That's corporate language for your leadership is now a liability. My boss finally looked up, at HR, not at me. eyes wide with the kind of panic people hide behind authority. He opened his mouth, but HR cut him off politely. "This is not up for debate," she said. "We're addressing risk." Risk always wins. The golden employee stared down at the table like he'd just aged 5 years. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Because he wasn't the mastermind. He was the tool. The real problem was the person who thought he could bend reality as long as he controlled the narrative. A week later, the company posted another org update. Not in an all hands. Not with applause. A quiet change on the internal page. My title was updated. Not the same one they'd given him. A better one. Because they couldn't justify anything smaller without admitting. The previous decision was a sham. The golden employee was moved sideways into a role with a nice-sounding name and no direct accountability. And my boss? He didn't get fired in a dramatic way. He got something worse in corporate terms. He got transitioned. His meetings were reassigned. His approvals were rerouted. People stopped looping him in. 2 weeks after the audit review, his calendar went blank. And then one Friday morning, his name disappeared from the directory. No announcement, no farewell note, just gone. That afternoon, the CFO walked past my desk and stopped. "Good work," she said quietly. "Not just on the savings." I nodded, because we both knew what she meant. I didn't celebrate. I didn't brag. I didn't post anything in the company channel. I just went back to work, calm, steady, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Not victory. Peace. Because the story was finally aligned with the truth. And the truth, once it's in writing, is the one thing nobody's favorite employee can steal.